Good morning. It is a bit late. It's already close to 5 to 11. This is a 10:30 class. And of course, as you know, I have the limitation of having Besifka after this. So I really only have 50 minutes, 50 minutes for this class, which is, I hope, enough. Um, what is the topic of today? The topic of today is Kuf, the second part of Kuf. Remember what I did yesterday? I've never done this before, right? I once had one of the oisias that I did over the course of 2 days, but I did all 8 psukim in succession. Here, we're not only dividing the psukim into 2 days, but we're dividing them into two different themes. In other words, this is the first time that I've decided, and again, I really hope the psukim are leading me and not my own fantasy, that you cannot identify one theme for these 8 psukim. You have to identify two. And they're both incredible themes. They're both very important and wonderful themes. Yesterday's theme was Kriya, right? Yesterday's theme was Kriya and Kidum. That David Melech is calling HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak, right? That's the spirit of it. David Melech is calling HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak. He's calling HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak. And of course, this Kriya constitutes, in effect, on the Mitzvas Hatefilla. He's davening to the Eibishter, and the Eibishter is reacting to his Kriya. And again, yesterday I explained to you at length the whole concept of Kriya and the whole concept of davening in a way that actually brings out, so to speak, a pneumistic connection between the Yid and the Eibishter. David Melech is pleading for him. I'm sorry, I'm having a lot of staple trouble here. David Melech is pleading to have this very deep connection to the Eibishter. Of course, it includes what we're calling Kidum, right? Getting up in the middle of the night to daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, etc., right? Those were the ideas that we talked about in the class of yesterday. Krasi b'chalev, krasicha, and then, of course, Kidamti Baneshev, and then Kidmu Einai Ashmoides, which was, of course, then followed up by Keli Shemek Chazdecha, the David Melch begging the Eibishter to hear his voice. So the first 5 or 6 psukim of Kuf have one Nakuda, the Nakuda of Kriya. And the way I explained it to you, of course, is that it's not Stam David Melech as davening. He wants a connection, right? The Iker Avoid of David Melech in this case is to develop a kesher, a connection with Atzmos and Hussein Sav Baruch. Pasuk Kuf Nun reads Karvu Reitfai Zima. People have gotten close to pursuing sin, and accordingly, they've gone further away from the Torah. In other words, the way it's understood is that the closer they get to Zima, the closer they get to sin, the further they get from HaKadosh Baruch. The continuity of this pasuk of the psukim before, of course, is that David is describing his pursuit of Elokus, and he's contrasting it to other people's pursuit of Shtus. But then there's a new theme. And this is what we're going to be discussing today. And that is, Rabbi say, that Psukim Kufnan Aleph and Kufnan Beis, we are going to understand as a brand new idea. And the code word is not the word Kriya and Kidum, but Lo'ilam. And it's an issue of Nitzchias HaTorah, the idea that the Torah is eternal. And that's how I'm teaching it to you, that Psukim Kufnan Aleph and Kufnan Beis, and we're going to also link Kuf Nun into this scheme. So it's going to end up being 3 psukim, Kuf Nun, Kuf Naf, and Kuf Beis are talking about a brand new subject, which is the subject of Nitzchias, the Torah is in eternity. It never changes. So we're going to give an introduction about Nitzchias HaTorah, and then we're going to tie it into the key words in this pasuk: Hashem, Havaya, Emes, and then of course liyolam. Or here again you have the word kedem, right? Hashem, emes, kedem, and liyolam. But in this case, kedem doesn't mean that I hastened, that I rushed to come early, like it meant in the earlier psukim, whatever they were, that kuf mem hey and kuf mem vav. But in this case, or kuf mem vav and kuf mem zayin, I'm already forgetting which the psukim were. In this case, kedem means before the world. So you have 4 words. Let's say havaya. Let's be generous. Havaya, emes, kedem, and la'olam. They're all going to speak to this theme of Nitzchias HaTorah, and this is the subject at hand. This is what we're going to be discussing. So start from the beginning, okay? Now, I'm not a Manamakemis person. Anybody who knows me, I'm not a Manamakemis person, but I'm going to give you 3 Makedas. The first is Hilchas Aseh Yateidah L'Rambam Perek Tes Halacha Aleph and on. The second is Hilchas Melachim U'Melchames U'Melech HaMashiach Perek Yiralef Halacha Gimel. And the third, of course, is the Pirush HaMishnayos L'Rambam and the Akdama to Perek Chelek. And you also have it in the Hakdama of the entire Pirush HaMishnayos L'Rambam, which I didn't have a chance to look up. But you also have it in Hakdama of Perek Chelek of Sanhedrin Ha'ikir Hatshi. And this is the idea of Ateidah Azul Atiyah Mechlefes. Ateidah never changes. I'm going to read to you just what it says in Pirush HaMishnayos. It says Hayasei Hatshi HaBittel. The 9th principle is Bittel, is that there's no such thing as an end to the Torah. But who this means? Shadeis Torah's Moshe, that this Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu Loiti and Nesucha will never be rewritten, v'lei nechlefes and never replaced. V'lei Tave Torah me'eis habayre zulasad, there will never be another Torah from the Creator besides for her. V'aleha, on her, on this Torah, ein lehesif is not allowed to increase. Umimena ein legrav, from her you're not allowed to diminish. And he adds lei b'teresh b'ksav, neither in the written Torah, nor in the oral Torah. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, I'm reading inside. Leitesef elav leitigram imenu. You're not allowed to increase, you're not allowed to add and diminish from it. Ukvabayanu mashetzarech levayed. And I've already explained what is necessary to explain about this 9th ikir. B'yeseiz and this principle psicha zehachiba, the beginning of this chiba, meaning the beginning of the Sefer Pirush HaMishnayos L'Rambam. Pirush HaMishnayos L'Rambam was written much earlier than the Mishnah Torah. So the Rambam is saying that in the Ekdama to this Sefer Mishnah Torah, I also spoke about this idea of Ateidah Azul Atiyah Mechlefes, and I'm going to be candid that I copied for myself in my own notes here. All 3 Rambams, the Rambam at the beginning of the Mishnah Torah I didn't copy. Maybe I'll copy it for myself just for recreational purposes after the Shir. This is called Nitzchias HaTorah. Torah never changes. Now, there's a common sense question. How could anything never change? That Hashem never changes, I get. Because He's Hashem. He's absolute. He's Matziloi B'mtzias. His existence is non-existential. One of the ideas which is discussed more in the Psadia Gon than in the Rambam, by the Eibush, there is no mikrim, which means there's no secondary events. There are no byproducts. There's no that because A happens, so automatically B has to happen. By the Eibush, there's none of those things. He's absolute. But anything that He creates has rules and laws. And if anything He creates that has rules and laws, as the circumstances change, the laws and the rules should adapt. But to say it in plain English, if the Eibishter is logical, b'chlal, and if the Eibush is logical in his relationship to the creation, then there's no such thing within any system of logic of something being stagnant. The nature of logic is that it adapts to its environment. The nature of logic that it reflects the circumstance in which it is. And if the circumstance changes, the logic changes. Pardon me, it has to be that way. So we have a real question. A real question. How could you say that Torah never changes? Now let me put it to you bluntly. It's the best way to do it is bluntly. In Jewish theology, there's the Chokim and the Mekubalim. There's the non-mystical theologians. And there are the mystical theologians. And one of the fundamental things that separates them is this simple question. Is God logic or is God the creator of logic? The philosophers hold that God is logic. And the reason they hold that is because they can't prove anything to the contrary. And the mystics hold God is the creator of logic. And Hashem himself is higher than logic, like the famous Lashon, which is so frequently cited, Nimna HaNimnois. So here comes the question. If a mystic, if a Mekubal, if Hasidus would argue that Torah never changes, and you would ask the question, how could you say Torah never changes? It's not logical. The answer would be Hashem isn't logical. And even if on a level of logic it has to be that when circumstance changes, mitzvahs change. But then as much as the Eibishter is l'mayla min haseichel, as much as the Eibishter is above reason, there's no need for that rule to apply. And in fact, that's what it says, Taka in the Samach Vav. Samach Vav is a huge arichis about it. It's called Ratzon. Hagbola Atzmis, Pnimiyas HaRatzon Nechatzi Amiti, it's called in Tanya Perek Chav Beis and Chav Gimel. And we say that the will by Hashem never changes. And I'm going to go back to this later on. But if you're the Rambam, and the Rambam is a philosopher, and philosophers believe that God is logic, in other words, not that God created logic, and he himself can step out of it pounds, but that logic is absolute truth, and something which is illogical is also foolish and false. So how could the Rambam say this? The Rambam is a philosopher. He's not the only philosopher, but he's a philosopher, an philosopher. Now, of course, when we say that Rambam is a philosopher, that means that's what the Rambam wrote. What was going on in the Rambam's heart and the Rambam's head, only the Rambam knew. And we are inclined to believe that the Rambam knew Kabbalah, and it was a deep mystic, like it says in Sefer Nasichas Tafshin, whatever, it's page 37 to page 43, that the Rambam, we have a Kabbalah from the Baal Shem Tov, but the Rambam is given a grace and Makubal. But in his writings, he writes like a philosopher. And he conforms to the basic law of philosophy that logic is be-all and end-all. Something which is illogical is false. Which is why the Rambam writes, even though it creates all kinds of kashas that don't have to do with him, that yesh lerim nois tevakayim. Rambam says befedish in the Meir Nevuchim that something which is higher than logic or without logic is foolish, cannot be. Can Hashem create a stone that he cannot lift? According to the Rambam, it's a foolish question, it's a stupid question, because logic doesn't tolerate that possibility. And there are innumerable other philosophical constants that the Rambam establishes based on the laws of logic. Like, for example, a malach cannot come into a physical goof, just to name another. And there are many. There are many. So the Rambam conforms to the laws of philosophy of logic. And yet the Rambam is the one who says that the Torah never changes. It doesn't seem consistent. It doesn't seem possible within the parameters of her philosophical system. And to be sure, the Rebbe brings in a Sikha, and I'm going to reference the Sikha. Look at the Sikha's Chelik Chav page 33. That's the beginning of the Sikha. And you have to look in footnote 12 and in footnote 13, and also read the second column of page 33 and the beginning of page 34. This is the beginning of the classic Sikha of the Rebbe, of the Refuas Hashas, that they never change. The Rebbe's classic Sikha that the halacha is that you're not supposed to follow the medicines found in the Gemara, you're not supposed to follow the diets that are found in Rambam because nishtanu ativim, because human nature changed. And the Rebbe dedicated months. It started after Pesach and continued well after Shavuos, or some after Shavuos. There's huge sichas that the Rebbe built in Mugadik sichas. In addition to this Mugadik sich, which is a likut, where the Rebbe argues that even though the halacha is brought in Ramah, that you can't follow the Refuas Hashas and you can't follow the diet of the Rambam because nishtanu ativim, it's not the Torah that's changed, it's the world that's changed. A gewaltige word. And the Rebbe says that word legabe kama than yonim, legabe yonim from Kiddush HaChedesh, and v'chulu. I mean, this is not a one circumstance assertion. But in the beginning of that Sikha, the Rebbe talks about this shita, this question of the Torah being eternal. And he brings it, the Rambam says, he quotes the Rambam in the Pirush HaMishnayos, it says that Torah zot teh machlefes. And then in the footnote he brings Rabbi Yosef Albu, who was a great choker as well. He was after the Rambam. Bala Machabe Sefer Ikrim. He also, by the way, quotes in the footnotes there the Sefer Reish Hamona, which is from the Abarbanel, which I did not look up. That Rabbi Yosef Albu brings Ikrim based on the Rambam's Yud Gimel Ikrim. The Rambam has Yud Gimel Ikrim, and the Yosef Albu has 4 Ikrim. They argue about the number of Ikrim. They argue about Pratam and Ikrim. And by the way, this is true not just here, it's true in Gabi other Yanim as well. And the Ikrim writes by Fedish that he disagrees with the Rambam. He says, since Torah is Chochmah, when the world changes, the mitzvahs are going to change. He disagrees. He says, in a logical system, it's impossible for anything to be absolutely stagnant. And he brings a raya. Before the Eibishter gave the Torah, there were different mitzvahs. There were fewer mitzvahs, different mitzvahs. And then when the Eibishter gave the Torah, he increased the mitzvahs. So on that basis, he argues that after Mashiach comes, there'll be an additional increase in mitzvahs. So the Rabbi Yosef Albo, the Bala Machaber Sefer Ikrim, argues with the Rambam, and the Ikrim seems to be right according to the Rambam's Shita. If the Rambam is a choik, if the Rambam is a philosopher, then the Rambam should agree that it's impossible for anything that's based on the principles of logic to be unchanging. It has to be able to change. Now, how to defend the Rambam? Honestly, I don't know. I can't say because there's different shittas in Chakir itself. In other words, you could say that in philosophy it's possible that something which is logical, even according to the laws of logic, should last indefinitely, based on arguments within the principles of philosophy itself. But in one way or another, the Ikin, Rabbi Yosef Albu says before Matan Torah was one set of mitzvahs. When Torah happened, there was a different set of mitzvahs. After Mashiach comes, going to be a third set of mitzvahs. And the Rambam says Torah never changes. And Rabbi Yosef Albu says it doesn't make sense. It's not logical. Now, when the Rebbe discusses this, Machloikis with the Rambam and the Ikin, he mentions an interesting additional point, which serves him well, and it helps understand the Rambam. Only problem is it doesn't help understand the Rambam and the principles of philosophy. It only helps understand the Rambam and the principles of Kabbalah and Hasidus. What is the principle that the Rebbe brings? That the Ikrim suggests that if Torah never changes, it could never have changed ever. In other words, if we're dealing with a phenomena which is not subject to change, from its inception it should not change. And the Ikrim argues that there's three stages. Before the Eibusha gave us a Torah, there were fewer mitzvahs. Now that the Eibusha gave a Torah, there was an increase of mitzvahs. So just like there was a change from before to after, which is a logical idea, the circumstances change, the mitzvahs change. So after Mashiach comes, there'll be another change based on an additional change of circumstance. And his argument, Rabbi Yosef Albo, the Ikorim's argument is that if you want to say that the Torah won't change, it has to be that it never changed. And he brought an eye from Kedem Matan. In other words, his opposition to the Rambam has a proof. Just like it changed from before Matan Torah to after Matan Torah, it's going to have to change from before Mashiach to after Mashiach. So the Rebbe brings this machlekes, and he inserts a very interesting argument, which the truth of the matter is, it's hard to understand. It's even hard to understand in the principles of Hasidus, and it's certainly hard to understand the principles of philosophy. But the Rebbe says it like this, and I'm paraphrasing. These are my words now. The Eibishter wrote and created the Torah before he created the world. Right? There were different medrashim. Apayim shana kol Torah le'elam. V'istach tov kufay and vav shana tov kufay and shana kedem le'elam. The Torah existed. There's all kinds of Amarei Chazal that speak of the Torah coming before the world. In addition, there is this idea that Torah is the blueprint for the world. The Yutagma, right? Difterois u'pinkesois. Like it says in the Zayir, the Stakel Be'eraiso. Bora Alma, the Eibishter looked into the Torah and created the world. Barnasha Stakel Be'eraiso v'ikayam. So we come after the Eibishter Kvayochel, and we look into his Torah, and we sustain the world that he created. So the Rebbe says this: when Hashem created the Torah, it was a logical Torah. And now I'm putting words into the Rebbe's mouth. When Hashem created the world, according to that Torah, it was a logical world. And so long as the Torah was logical, and so long as the world was logical, the Ikorim is right. That the Torah can always change. New world, new circumstance, new Torah. However, when the Eibishter gave us the Torah, it wasn't just an ikshus, a stubbornness that said, okay, from now on, this never changing. He fundamentally changed the Torah. How? Anoichi. The Gemara says that Anoichi is an abbreviation for 4 words. Ano, nafshi, ksavis, yehavis, which means Ano, I, nafshi, my will, my soul, my essence, my will. Ksavis, I wrote, and yehavis, and I gave. And we had in one of the Maimorim that we're learning recently that ksavis is Torah shebeksav and yehavis is Torah shebapevregishma. But the Lashon Gemara is Anoichi is Ano, nafshi, I, my will, I wrote, and I gave. So Chassidus explains that this means that Hashem wrote into his Torah will. And not an ordinary will, what's called Pnimiyas Haratzon, the innermost will, which is in contrast to Chitzoniyas Haratzon. And of course, there's a philosophical argument that says that the definition of will is that it's above reason. When I want something, which is called Chitzoniyas Haratzon, as a secondary want, I need money, so I want a job. Or I want food, so I need money. I want to be healthy, so I want to eat. So there are many things that I want that are means to ends. It's called the chitzonius dekeratz. And they're innumerable, they're innumerable. Chitzonius dekeratzenis. And the rule is that if I want something as a means to an end, if it could be provided in a different way, I don't want it anymore. If I had money without working, I don't need to work, and so on. So I don't really want money. I don't really want work. I want money, because the want is a logical want. It's called the chitzenius dikeros. Then something called a pnimius haratzon, an inner will. An inner will means it's not a means to an end. I want this because I want this. Like, for example, a human being's desire to live is a pnimius dikeros. And according to Chassidus, it's Hashem's nisava kadosh baruch hu liyas leyizborech dide betachtenim. The Eibishter's want from creation, and his want in Teda, and his want in the Shamas Yisrael is called a pnimius dikeros, an innermost will. And the rule by an innermost will is that it's not based on logic. It's not supporting anything else. It's simply expression of the essence of the person. What you are comes out in your inner will. And just like you can't change you can't change your inner will. Kayachol, what the Eibishter is, comes out in his inner will. And as he cannot change, nor can his innermost will. This is called, in Tanya it's called Pnimiyas Haratzon Ha'elyon V'cheftzei Ha'amiti, the innermost will of God. And its true desire. It's, like I said, it's mentioned in Chav Beis, chapter 22, but it's negir really more in Chav Gimel, chapter 23, where he talks about mitzvahs and Teda. That it never changes because it's will. And in the Samach Vav, there's a huge arichis that discusses the difference between chitzenius haratzon and pnimius haratzon, and says that something which is a deep pnimius dikaratzon, the inner will in the deepest levels, is as changeable as the master of that will himself, which in this case is the Eibishter. And as Hashem doesn't change, his will doesn't change. And that's why Teda never changes. Now, while we're on this subject, I want to elaborate, okay? There is, it's brought in Hasidus in this way. There's a will which is between Moichen and Midas. There's a will that comes after logic. And a will that comes after logic is a logical will and therefore subject to change. And then there's a will which comes before logic, higher than logic. And the will which is before logic, this is called the Pnimius Dikerotzen, and it never changes. And then the Maimorim start to sing and dance. I don't mean this chas v'shalom in a disparaging way, but it is complicated. A number of ideas are introduced, including a concept which is called Yesh Tam Komos L'Ratz. Sometimes a will is higher than reason. But it's not that there is no Tam, it's just that it's a Tam Komos. In other words, some wills seem above reason, but they're outside of Etzem. So Chassidus says that Yesh Tam Komos L'Ratz will later come into a Tam. So it's not a real Pnimius Dikerotzen. The truest, innermost will is called Ein Tam Komos L'Ratz. Not only does it not have a revealed tam, it doesn't even have a hidden tam. A tam that you can't put into words. Like the Gemara says, Shasik Rav, and Chassidus explains why he couldn't give an explanation, and the halachas like him, nevertheless, according to certain Rishonim. So, there's a tam golui, l'ratzon, which means that the ratzon is hatefilla, based on reason. This tam komos l'ratzon means there's really a tam, but it can't yet come be'ez galus. Maybe it'll come la'achar zman, v'kayetze b'zeh. And then there's ein tam komos. There's no reason for us now. V'oid, moreover, there's even something else, because the word tam is associated with different things. There's tam v'eitza, there's tam v'seichel, and there's tam v'oinik. And it says in Sefer Yetzirah, ein lamayla mi'enik. Every ratzon has an oinik behind it. And of course, this is discussed at length in Chassidus, in Samach Vav, and the Maimorim, I guess, of Neich and Lech Lecha. So we say ein tam l'ratzon means not only there's no tam goli, not only there's no tam komos, there isn't even tam v'enig. The innermost will of Hashem is above all tainuk. Now, the Sefer Yetzirah does say ein lamayla me'enig, and different to something called enig, haposhut, habilti murgav, habilti murgish, klal, which is behind the ratzon. But if you're familiar with the Samach Vav, he explains that oinig and that ratzon are moved mizeh completely. So for all intents and purposes, to me, it's a ratzon. The chatzei amiti is beli tam, has no tam whatsoever. Now, I just gave you a little bit of a discourse, and I guess for some of you this was an interesting chazara of my Morim and Samach Vav. For some of you this was a really fast-paced conversation. The important thing is that there's real will and fake will. A fake will isn't a will. It's an expression of something less than will. My logic, my desire, and so on. A real will is an expression of the essence. Ratzon is called Gilui HaNefesh, the revelation of the Nefesh. And Pnimius HaRatzon is the revelation of the Nefesh in its deepest levels. And by definition, it's not logical. And by the Eibishter Kvayachal, it's the same thing. So the Rebbe says a Chiddush Gadol. And it's a Chiddush which is really hard to understand. The Torah, the minute before the Eibishter gave it, was Chochmah. And in as much as the Torah before the Eibishter gave it was Chochmah, the Ikrim is right. The Shinuim from before creation and during creation and going on into creation itself, etc., etc. Any logical system has to be subject to change when the circumstances on the ground change. And when the Eibishter gave us the Torah, he didn't change the essence of the Torah. He added to the Torah the dimension of Ratzon. He said, this logical book I now desire. Now, it's hard to understand how that could work. How can you first have a book which is based on logic, and then post facto you come along and you say, "Ano nafshi ksavis Yehovas," I'm writing into this logical book my absolute will. And just like I'm unchanging, my will is unchanging, and this Torah is unchanging. But that's what the Rebbe says. That's what the Rebbe explains in a few short paragraphs, in a very benign, in a very part of a way, that it's not the pshat the Torah was never changeable. The Torah became unchanging not because something happened to what the Torah is, to the substance of the Torah, but what happened to Hashem's relationship with the Torah. He decided, I want this. No, nafshi, ksav, he wrote his will into the Torah. And the Rebbe says this is an answer to the Ikrim's Taina on the Rambam. But it's a Hasidic answer to a philosophical question. The Ikrim's Taina is, if it's true that Torah never changes, which he disagrees with also, then it has to be that Torah was never changeable. But the fact is, Torah once was changeable. And if Torah was once changeable, because before Matan Torah there were fewer mitzvahs, and after Matan Torah there's more mitzvahs, and just like it was once changeable, it has to continue being changeable going into the future. So the Rebbe says, no, you don't understand. Torah was changeable, and then at Matan Torah became unchangeable going forward. What about the question of the Ikrim, that's not philosophically sound? And the answer is, you're right, because it's not a philosophical change. It's a will change. And that's how the Rebbe explains Shittas HaRambam. When the Rambam Paschal, even though he's a philosopher, the Torah never changes because Hashem wrote into the Torah, which is by itself a logical book, His will. And by the way, this Sikh and Chelik Chav Gimel about the Refuas Hashas, I have at length on my website. If you go to my website, inzechassidus.org, you can find it in the Likkutei Sichos section, and I believe you can also find it in the Rambam section. I think. I'd like to think. If not, it should be there. I'll take a look later, Mitzvah Shem, Bli Neder. So this is the Rebbe's Shita in the Rambam Shita. The Rambam, who was a philosopher, nevertheless paskins that once the Torah was given, and the Eibishter wrote the Anoichi, Ano, Nafshi, my will, Pnimius Aratzon Lecheftzei Amiti, Ksavis, I wrote it, Yehovas, and I gave it into the Torah, Torah Shebeksav and Torah Shebapel, like we read in the Pirush HaMishnah. That makes the Torah unchangeable. Not because the logic tolerates a lack of change. There's no such thing as logic tolerating a lack of change. Logic has to tolerate change. But rather because it's supralogic, it's will. Hashem willed the Torah into being immortal, willed the Torah into being in eternity, being forever. Now, I want you to know that some of the ideas written in some of the Mefarshim here are going to contradict what I just said. Because certainly on the word kedem, right? Kedem yadaiti meidesecha means that the Torah has been eternal from before creation. The Rebbe here is weaving a complicated web. He wants to respond to the Ikrim's question. If Torah will never change, it should never have changed. And he resolves it by saying that in as much as Torah is logical, it could always change. In as much as the Eibishter wrote his will into the Torah, which happened on Vav Sivan, Beis Alaf and Taf Mem Ches, when Hashem gave us the Torah, before that it was subject to change, and after that it's no longer subject to change. That's the Vort. That's the Gedank. And in the Mefarshim they're going to say Kedem. It was never changeable. And it's not such a big kasha, because you could even say that even when the Torah changes, it's only the halachas, the practical side of the Torah that changes, and the chokhmah, the wisdom is in Yanatzmi, and there's other ways of explaining it. And I'm not going any further into this question. I'm simply saying that it's going to be a contradiction in a certain aspect. But getting to the point, these psukim, what is the theme of these psukim? The theme of these psukim is Havayeh, Emes, Kedem, and Le'olam. That the Torah that the Eibishter gave us is a book which has no subject to change. Why? So according to what the Rebbe says in the Sikha, because it's will. It's higher than wisdom. It's higher than the Eibishter's wisdom, and therefore it's not subject to change whatsoever. Now, I would argue further that even on a philosophical level, you could say that the Torah never changes, because the philosophers hold that logic comes before reality. I'm sure you've heard of this debate and this question. Which came first, the physical world or the logic that supports it, or the logic that governs it? So in the secular world, they understand that the physical world is a mistake, happened by itself, so that we are now discovering its rules post factum. In other words, nobody consciously was aware of these rules when the worlds were formed, because they believe in a Big Bang and an evolution and arbitrary random creation. But philosophy argues that before there was the world, there was the ideas of the world, because they don't believe in arbitrary random creation. They believe in a creator. Whether you hold like the philosophers that it's only yesh b'yesh, rak b'shanatzura, or lahavdil, you hold like Teiras Emes, that it's the yesh b'yayim, which is havas b'chol rega, b'chuli, b'chuli, b'chuli. But if you hold that there's a creator, then the neshama of the creation precedes the guf of the creation. The seichel of the creation precedes the guf of the creation. So there's a concept among philosophers when they describe malachim, and then of course to a lesser extent when they describe neshamas, that they exist without a guf, and they're engaged in seichel, which is an inyan atzmi, which never changes. So even though the Rebbe is saying that hatera zu le'tiyah muchlefes is because of a rotzen which is added to a chochmah, and it answers that the Albu, Rabbi Yosef Albu's kashev, how it once was able to change, and from now on it's not able to change anymore, because originally it was only logic, and then when it was logic, it was always subject to change, and then when the Eibishter's will, it became above change. But I'm saying something additional, that according to philosophy, you could even say that the ideas of Torah never change. The practices in Torah change. The mitzvahs Hatefilla change, but the theories, the seichel Hatefilla, never changes, because they're as true as God Himself. Ideas on an absolute level are absolutely true. I'm not in a position to give you absolute ideas, because I'm a very subjective and by no means absolute being. But just to give you an example, it's a poor example, but it's an example that work is right and laziness is wrong, is an absolute law of logic. Or goodness is real and evil is not the opposite of good, it's a lack of the exertion of the energy needed to be good, is an absolute law. And things like these, that if there wasn't a world, there would still be truth and falsehoods, right? There wouldn't be good and bad, but there'd be truth and falsehood. It's true that working hard is energetic and correct. Being lazy is weak and inefficient. It's true that, I always say this, goodness is godness. Good is God. And that God is forever, so is good forever. And evil is not the alternative to good or the opposite of good. It's when good is lazy. These are ideas that I'm trying to suggest. And again, these are I didn't think it through. I didn't prepare it. So it's toig of kaporis. But nevertheless, these are examples of ideas of logic which are absolute. Always were and always will be true. So what I'm suggesting is that when the Rebbe brings his resolution to the kasha of Rabbi Yosef Albu and the Rambam by saying that the reason the Torah was once subject to change and after Matan Torah is not subject to change is because when the Torah was logical, it was subject to change, and after the Torah was given the Eibishter added will, is as far as mitzvahs are concerned. But as far as the Chochmah, Rabbi Yosef Albu also agrees that the Chochmah is eternal. Rabbi Yosef agrees that the Chochmah is eternal because the Chochmah is an expression of the Chocham Ha'atzmi. The Eibishter himself was an etzem of Chochmah, who Ayadei and Ayadu and who Amada, especially according to the Chaykriyas. So to complete this journey, if you will, what have we just determined? We've determined that the last 2 or 3 psukim of Eis Kuf, Kuf Nun, Kuf Nal, Kuf Beis are talking about Nitzchias HaTorah, the eternity of Torah, and that we're explaining the eternity of Torah in 2 ways. In as much as behavior and mitzvahs are concerned, we're explaining the eternity of Torah, that when Hashem gave us the Torah, He put His will into His wisdom, and then the mitzvahs become unchangeable. And when it comes to the logical ideas of the Torah, even the Ikki would agree that the logic is absolute and not subject to change, because it's part of the source of all logic, which is the Eibishter himself, especially according to the Chayk, who hold that God is not the creator of logic, God is logic himself. So there's 2 aspects of the inyan of Torah Zoltiyah Muchlefes. There's a seichel dika aspect, which is true in theory, and there's an atzmiyas dika aspect, which is true also when it comes to Lamaisa Bepeil, which begins at Har Sinai. Okay, so we're reading several psukim which speak about Nitzchias HaTorah, but I want to add one more thing. And there's also such a thing as Nitzchias of Bnei Yisrael. And again, I spent time preparing, and I didn't have a chance to find this medrash, but the medrash says, Lahachlifam b'uma acheres ein yochel. Hashem cannot replace the Jewish people with another nation. Just as Torah is layachalif v'layomer dasei leilamam, like it says in Yudiyim al-Ikrei Hamun, Hashem will never alter or replace his Torah at all. It's higher than Seichel and therefore higher than Shinuyim. It's true about his relationship with the Jewish people. Now here also you could say several madregas. First of all, you could bring from the Gemara in Masechta Bava Basra about Iyov, that the Satan tells the Reibish that you're never going to have another Avraham Avinu. So by Mele, you can't replace the Jewish people, not because they don't deserve to be replaced, but because there's nobody with whom to replace them. Satan L'Shem Shemayim Neskaven, the Gemara says. Or, of course, how you have it in Chassidus, that Vesel Lashon Yisrael all over Machshava, that Yidden are the Eibishter's children. And they're in the Eibishter's thought before creation, before the thought of creation, before the will of creation, before the Ratzon HaMuchat of creation. Yidden are one Ratzon Hussein Salbarach, like the famous Teras Arava Magid, which the Rebbe loves and repeats so frequently, particularly in Marim of Rosh Hashanah, that a love for a father for a child is infinite. And the father sees his child, the image of his son is nechkak, is carved into his memory, and he never forgets it. But by a human father, there's one basic limitation. He cannot envisage his son until after he's born. But by the Eibush, that limitation does not exist, because the Eibush is L'malam Hazman, he's above time. And therefore, even before the Eibush created us, the fact that he's going to create us in the future made that Yisrael all over Machshava. Yidden are one with Atzmas. The Eibush anticipates his children, and even before his children exist, he sees them. And there's no before that. This is an Inyan. The Eibush himself envisages Kfayachol, the Yidden. And therefore, just like the Rambam says that the Torah can never change, and Chassidus explains that the Torah can never change because it's a will which is higher than a wisdom, etc. The same is true. Hashem's relationship with the Yidden can never change. Like I said before, there's a logical component to it, and there's an absolute component to it. The connection between Yidden and the Eibush is a Ratzon Pnimi V'Yatzim. Like it's brought in the Maimorim and the Sichos, and the Rebbe mentioned it Barichis and told us Toshin and Beis. It's printed in its Muga that Eliyahu Navi says in Tanat V'Eliyahu, Shnei Dvarim Kodma L'Eilam, two things precede everything, Yisrael v'Teira. And Eliyahu Navi says, Ein Yedei Mi Kodma L'Mi, I don't know which came first, Teira and Neshamas Yisrael. And then he concludes, since I looked into the Torah, and it says, Daber Bnei Yisrael, Emer Bnei Yisrael, Tzav Bnei Yisrael, so the Rebbe's Lashon is, that the Medrash's Lashon is, Oimer Ani, Ich Zog, it's my opinion, that Machshavta Anshe Yisrael, Kodma L'Chol, no, but I feel the Machshavas HaTorah. That the thought for the Jewish people is higher than everything, even than the thought of Torah. So if Torah is Leitia Machlefes, for whatever reasons, the reason of the Ikrim, the reason of the Chassidus, the Sham itself is sure Leitia Machlefes. And this is why, this is part of the reason why I'm insisting that as we learn these psukim, we're going to include in our discussion also Kuf Memtes. Kuf Nun. What does it say in Kuf Nun? Karvu Reit Feizima. Right? Karvu Reit Feizima. Pardon me, let me take a look inside. Those who pursue a life of immorality have come nearer to me. Karvu Reit Feizima. They've come nearer to me. Miteras Horachaka. They've gone further away from your Torah. So there's a connotation of aggression. Right? They're attacking David HaMelech, so to speak. So there's two ideas. There's three ideas. There's Reit Fei, there's Karvu Zima, and there's the Teras Horachaka. The closer they get to Taivas, the further they get from the Eibishter. And there is that they're also in pursuit of me. And David HaMelech is not davening for them to be punished, but rather Korav Atah Deishem V'chol Mitzusecha Emes, the Meforshim Taich. In this time the Rishonim become benevolent, which is quite uncharacteristic based on what I've been reading. And they say, Zayzeh Makarev. David HaMelech is telling the Eibishter that even these Reitfai, that are Karvu Zima, and Mitei Rachaku, Zayzeh Makarev, bring them close. So what I'm doing is, I'm joining Kuf Nun, Kuf Naf and Kuf Nun Beis to create a shir, a thesis, a sugja, a topic. As if when David HaMelech wrote the 8 psukim of Kuf, he meant two different themes. And all the Oisias till Tzaddik. And I don't know yet what today's Shinataf are going to bring. Each us was a theme, whether it took us one class to do it or it took us two classes to do it, but all 8 psukim, we found the common theme for all 8 psukim. Kuf has 2 themes. The first 6 psukim are about Ekro'echa and Kidamti, that he's calling and reaching for HaKadosh Baruch Hu when he's getting up in the night. He's elevating the night as well to come closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the second theme is Emes Havaye and Emes and Kidmu and Liela, that some things are eternal. And not only is the Torah eternal, Yidden are eternal. And therefore we read Kufnun, Kadvor Eitz Vezim, there are those who pursue evil, that are approaching me, and they want to do me damage. They're going further and further away from the Torah, which means that, like the Chesadikim or the Cheves Halavav we mentioned yesterday, Kishem She'ina Eish V'Mayim Yishkinu Yachtov, just like it's impossible for fire and water to cohabit, to exist in the same space, so the Gishmak of Taivis, of Avedis Hashem, and the Gishmak of Taivis, of Gashmizdika things are not, they can't possibly be compatible, they can't be in the same place, and therefore, Karvuzima is Teiras Arachaku. They're exactly the same thing. They're equal and opposites. They're inverse, equal and opposites. And nevertheless, David says, Zayrei Makarev. They're Yidden. Karev Ata Deshem. You are near to everything. On the Madrega of Hashem, on the Madrega of Emes, on the level of Kidm, on the level of La'olam, even the biggest Rash Hashem does not abandon. Like it says in the Midrashim, and it's brought in Chassidus, and the Rebbe said it in the Siches, that if Nadav or Avihu, not even both of them, if Nadav or Avihu, we're not present when the Eibush gave us the Torah could not be given, because the Eibush needs none of an Avi. And like I told you earlier in this sequence, in these Shiurim, the Sipur, where somebody complained to the Frierdiker Rebbe that he's Makarav Machal Shabbos, and he included him in his minyan, and the Rebbe said, Men versteht nicht meine Menschen. You don't understand my people. A Yid is tired. The Tiredkeit von a Yid can be nicht messen. The preciousness of Jew is impossible to measure. And therefore, even a Yid who's in a Bechina of Reitve and Karvu Zima, and B'Teira Rochaku, Karavata Hashem, the Eibush is close to him as well, on the level of Ava Atzmis, and he brings it closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Like the famous story which went around years ago, Rabbi Yosef Jacobson repeats it, but the source of it is Harav David Leidelman and his Chavrusa that they found on a train. And the Sipur B'Nukudasa is that the Rebbe, before the Nasias, came down from the Frierdiker Rebbe's Dira, and he saw 2 Bacharim. So he ran over to them, he walked over to them, and he said, I'm now coming from the Frierdiker Rebbe, and I have a new nugget, I have a new diamond. Would you like to hear it? And of course they said yes. And the Rebbe told them the following. He says that I sit in Merkis, and all kinds of people walk in. And everybody who walks in, I'm kind to, I'm nice to them. I'm a cut of them, I talk to them, I engage them, I discuss. So people are coming to me complaining that I'm a cut of what's called Freie, secular Jews who are in the Lashon of Lubavitch, not religious at the moment. And the taina against me is that some of these Yidden on the Bechina, Meridim Leman, Freie Yidden, you have to hate, you're not allowed to be Makarav. The extreme shitas that existed in Europe, which carried over to America after the war. So the Rebbe said to the Frierdiker Rebbe, I have been doing this for a long time. Now I'm getting pressure from quite God-fearing, sincere Jews. So I'm asking the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe, to tell me, give me clarity on this question. So the Nekuda was the Frierdiker Rebbe told him he should continue being Makarav them. But he gave a mashal. That when a mother has more than one child, she doesn't split her love. When a mother has more than one child, she loves every child absolutely, 100%. How it's possible is a different question, but that's the fact. The nature of paternal love is that more kids doesn't spread it thinner, the love remains infinite across the board. So if you love all your children, and you love all of your children equally, so you're not allowed to have a favorite, men abonim, like Yankov Avida, they're all equal. Nevertheless, said the Frierdiker, the fact of life is that if Chas v'Shalom, a person has a child that's what they call today special, missing an eye, missing an ear, missing a hand, missing a foot, having a problem with the heart. So even though the love of the parent to all the children is infinite, somehow the love for this child is different. It's better, it's special, it's more. So the Rebbe says the Eibush does love for every single Jewish person, like it says in the word from Baal Shem Tov, that every single Yid is tired by the Eibishter, v'ya ben Yachid neilad leheidim skeinim liyezik nasim. Baal Shem Tov said this, that every Jew is as beloved HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like an only child who's loved by of parents who brought him into this world when they were already senior, old, that the love is so absolute. That's how the Eibush does every single year. But when someone's special, the mashal, they have no eye. That means they don't see Elikus, they don't understand Achtas Hashem. They have no ear, they don't learn Torah. They don't have hands, they don't put on tefillin. They don't have feet, they don't go to shul. The love is even greater than. Love is even greater. The diminished child, the blemished child, the Bamum, the love is even greater. Now, we don't have to go in now to this whole issue of Medidim V'Lemaidin and Apakursim and Mumadim, because today they don't exist. Yidden today, for 5 generations at least, are in the category of Amoritz, of Tinik Shenishal Beinu Umis. They have no Hischai. The only people of Hischai with Torah mitzvahs are the people who were born and raised from you. And the Rebbe said to the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe told the Rebbe, you have to love them unconditionally. Even, in other words, you love all your children infinitely, and somehow you love them more. And that's the Hemshech HaPsukim. Karvu, Reit Faizima, they're pursuers of evil. That because of the pursuit of evil, and the Rishonim don't necessarily translate Zima from the word znus. It just means kir. It means disgusting, lowly, abominable things of all different types. And automatically they're going away from the Torah because the two are mutually exclusive. And what's worse, Karvu, they're pursuing me. Nevertheless, Karav Atah Hashem, your God. Karav Atah Havaya. Right? So you start with the word Atah. You are God. And of course, you all know what it says in Hasidus. You all know what it says in Hasidus. Right? Atah Hareisa Ladas. Du Atzmus Hus Hazich Bavizn. Ladas. As mir zon dir wissen. So you have in Hasidus the whole Shturim that Atah is Atzmus. Like Meidani Lefanach is Hayden Shemus. Like the story with the Radatz, where the Tzemach Tzedek told him, when you say Ata, you should know to whom you're saying Ata. So, Karav Ata Hashem, the Eibishter is Ata. And Ata means you. And you, on the other hand, means the truth of HaKadosh Baruch, which is beyond all level. And at the same time, you, who is beyond all level, is a Moir who is Galos, Nadaz, Hatinik. The Eibishter himself, who is beyond all level, is everywhere and available for everybody. Karav Ata. We're talking about Atadu, Atzmasamhus, he's close to everybody, even to the worst Yid. And then it says Havaya. Havaya means Hashem's name. What's the dig of Havaya? The dig of Havaya is this. That in Kabbalah, there's a method that would explain how Hashem could love a Rasha that's arbitrary, right? To use a modern terminology that's liberal. It's called Chitzenius Hamakiv Kachashecha Koira. It says in Chassidus that Ein Seif is infinite. And the Chitzenius of Ein Seif is infinite and doesn't care. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters. So on the level of Ein Seif, which is infinite, but Chitzenius Hamakif, where nothing matters, the Rosh and the Tzaddik are equal because Hashem Pasha doesn't discern, right? It's higher than logic. No, logic would say this is a good and this is a bad person. Higher than logic, how can you judge? You either love them both or you hate them both. So you would think, Sal Kadaita Chamina, that Karev Ata, the idea that the Eibush is close even to a Rasha, is because it's a Makiv. So the Pasuk says Havaya. Ata goes in Atzmasam Hus, that the Eibush himself looks at a Jew, the worst Jew, and loves him, and says Havaya, I love him even when it comes into Ishtalshalos. And in Ishtalshalos there's judgment, there's Teva Nirah, there's Chesed and Gevura, and so forth. Even the way Ata comes into Havaya, the Eibush is close to every Jew, and he continues the whole mitzvah emes. Just like it's close to every Jew, the mitzvahs are also emes. And I'm going to add that the word emes applies not just to mitzvahs. Emes applies also to every Jew, that every Jew is true. Every Jew is real. Right? Like it says in Tanakh, and it's explained in so much in Kabbalah and Chassidus, that v'chishev machshavos lebilti yidach mimenu nidach. No Jew will be left behind, the Rambam Fried sings. A spark of godliness cannot be lost. And the Shama of Yidden for sure cannot be lost. And the Eibush defines 101 different ways to reel in, to be Makaref, to bring back the Jews who are otherwise lost. And this is part of the Eibush's emes. It's an absolute truth. It doesn't allow a single year to be lost. And then in the next pasuk it says, Kedem, before anything was, Yadaiti made Vesach, I knew about the eternity of your mitzvahs. Or to say it in plain English, since I understood that your Chochmah comes before the world, I automatically understood that it's eternal. You founded them to be, Laila means for the world, in the world, to the world, and also for an eternity. And the Mefarshim explain that this means that when you examine the mitzvahs and you see how beautiful they are and how reasonable are, and also how layered they are, that on one level you do mitzvahs for midas tevis, on a second level you do mitzvahs a deis nechenis, And in the third law, we do mitzvahs like the Rambam writes about Mashiach. And the Rebbe explains in the Hadrin that mitzvahs have different kavanas. The highest madrig of kavanas and mitzvahs, according to the Rambam, is the dasas Hashem. So when you look at these mitzvahs and you understand how wise they are, and you also understand the different layers, that on a lower level they're for the seichel of midas tevis. But that's not all of it. When you graduate from the seichel of midas tevis, when you complete the seichel of midas tevis, there's the seichel of deis nechenes. But that's not all of it. When you graduate from deis nechenes, then you have the infant ladasas havai. And of course, Chassidus would add that when you're done with ladasas Hashem, then you have adalei yoda, higher than dasas havai. And then of course you have higher than that, how le yoda comes into yoda. And that's what these 2.5 psukim are saying. That even the Reit Feizima, and even the Rachak Miteris of the Shem, that are karvu to David HaMelech, they be just makar of them. Because Hatera Zu L'tiyeh Machlefes, and Umazu L'tiyeh Machlefes. L'achlifam B'uma Cheres Eini Yoch. And it's because there's aspects of the relationship between Yidden and the Eibishter that their logic is an unchanging and absolute logic. And there are aspects of the relationship with Yidden and the Eibishter which are fundamentally beyond logic. They come from the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now I have to be honest, it's already 11:45, so I have to stop. And I didn't cover everything. I feel bad. I gave you a very good introduction. But I didn't have sufficient time to fully develop the psukim, right? The way that Rishonim explained, Kedem, what's the word? Kedem, Yodaiti Medisach. Before I knew your Edis, I knew your Edis. So I have to stop. You get the message, right? The message is that in Ois Kuf, there's 2 themes. Kriya and Kidamti and Le'elam. And in this second thing of Le'elam is included the idea that La'achlifam B'uma Cheres Eini Yochel Yid is eternally connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that Teira Zu L'tiyeh Machlefes, that Teira is infinitely connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So let me finish with one final thought, and that of course is the Gemara. It's Brachas and Shabbos. That there is Pasha Rishon of Krishma and Pasha Shni of Krishma. What's the difference between the first Pasha of Krishma and the second Pasha of Krishma? And of course the answer is the Pasha Rishon of Krishma is through Kabbalah Sel Malchus Shemaim, we commit to God. And the second Pasha of Krishma is Kabbalah Sel Mitzvah, to commit to His commandment. So it says in Chasidus that the difference between the two is that there's 630 commitments to the mitzvahs, there's one commitment to HaKadosh Baruch. And when it came to Matan Torah, and Yidden said Nasa, Kedim Lenishma, Nasa, this is Kabbalah Sel Malchus Shemaim, and Nishma, this is Kabbalah Sel Mitzvahs. So the Gemara says that the Min said to one of the Amiroyim, Ama Pziza, Avilda Fog, Daktim Upamach. How do you commit to something if you don't know what you're committed to yet? And of course the answer is because you're committing to HaKadosh Baruch. You're committing to Anoichi. And you know 2 things. Number 1, and He's not going to ask us to do something that we cannot do. And number 2, it's not changing. There's nothing to negotiate. You can't say, okay, I'll take a different Torah. The way Torah is, the way Torah has to be, because it's a logic which is above change, and it's above logic altogether. And these 2 relationships you have both in Torah and in the Shemas Yisrael. And therefore, if you can't say Nas in the beginning, you can't say Nas in the end, because you can't do anything with it. And you didn't have enough seichel, to put their seichel aside, legamen, and to say Nas Evenishma. So tomorrow we're going to do Eis Reish, and today at 5 o'clock there's going to be a Maimashir, the 3rd part of the Maimah B'Shosh Yudin with Toshin Yud Beis. Is going to end up taking 5 classes. And then at 8 o'clock I'm having a Fabrengen about Nenem Sheikh Gula for the Ilu Nishmas of Beryl Zucker's wife, whose name I should know but I don't know, and I'm going to air it by us also.